Alright everybody, welcome to the 38th Life of the Email. Now, I am recovering from the COVID, so there may be occasional coughing, which I'm not sure Joe will cut out. Sometimes he does my bidding and sometimes he doesn't, so he might just leave it in there to spite me. Who knows?
Wink.
But I'm just going to let you know the reading for this Life of the Email will not be as smooth, but hopefully it will still be very interesting. So, without further ado, let us begin. I was weak. From the very beginning I was weak. The god of chance. What kind of a domain is that? I shouldn't have been born. I was barely a god. And every day, those who could rattle the heavens reminded me of that. But they left me alive, because what fun would the mainland be without poor, weak Loki? But one day that all changed. See, whenever I woke up, I was different than the day before. My strength, my intelligence, my form, all of it changed as if by chance. But even on my best days, my power was nothing compared to the others. But one day, I woke up to find unbelievable power flowing through my veins. Finally, I was strong. Finally, I could fight. And finally, I could kill. And kill I did. From morning to evening, I soaked my hands in the blood of the gods. And everyone that made fun of me, everyone that had been stronger than me, well, I made sure to have the last laugh. And as the light of evening illuminated a war-torn and scorched land, I stored the last ounce of my power and rested in the high chair of the Divine Council, finally content. But satisfaction is always so short-lived, you know. In time, the land regenerated and forgot about my walls, and I found myself the ruler of a desolate paradise I couldn't escape. For the first few centuries, I contented myself with grand feats of construction. I made magnificent palaces, gardens, the like. But once I had accomplished everything I had ever dreamed of, it seemed so empty. So, I took up the task of managing the creaturing realm. And, to be sure, it maintained my interest for a time. At first I was a benevolent goddess, using my power to bring up the prosperity of nations, and joy to the echelons. But soon the creatures that lived there came to expect my benevolence, as if I were a vendor selling goods in exchange for gratitude. So I decided to play the devil, and for a time that too was entertaining. The despair, the horror, all the blood, it was refreshing in a way, you know. But, like everything else, it got so boring as time went on. It was so extreme, so indelicate. What I needed was a story, nuance, a plot with characters and passion. So I used what little power I had, stored all those seasons ago, to send a construct to capture and bind the souls of 6 children to the soul of my hero. But, like any good story, I also placed a traitor in the midst, a little girl who naively trusted me, and who I set the task of utilizing a great power that had been stored in the creaturely realm to, if by some miracle, set me free from my heavenly prison. Of course, I had little faith that it would succeed. But if worse came to worse, her betrayal of her friends would still be quite entertaining. So, I placed my heroes in an academy, and provided for them by means of a teacher I had subjected to my bidding. There they encountered many trials and grew to fine adventures. Occasionally they surprised me, as when they, without desire for monetary gain, sought to aid an old widow with some pesky badges. Other times they impressed me. For instance, they solved what I thought would be a very difficult puzzle for such musical creatures in record time. But most of all, they enchanted me, as I came to regard them, and they came to regard each other, as friends, perhaps. I was riveted. What more could I say? But then the time came, like all good stories, where the one I had created was reaching a close. I'll admit, I expected them to die valiantly, but yet again, they surprised me and were quite creative in their methods of victory. Yet what came after, I could have hardly hoped for. As for my little traitor, well, she cast a summoning spell I had given her, and I actually felt myself begin to become pulled toward the creaturely realm. And in a moment, I suddenly found myself there, freed from my heavenly prison and amongst the very children I've been observing. I was ecstatic beyond all words, but I couldn't afford to ruin such a delightful tale, so I did what I could to hide my excitement. I told them that if they desired, I would let them live in paradise, as a gift for freeing me, and besides, I had no need of it anymore. And of course, I would tell them everything before they lent, because curiosity really can enslave such creatures. But for some unbeknownst reason, some of them refused to trust me. I tried to show them I meant them no ill will, but they simply wouldn't believe me. And then, oh then, they tried to send me back to that god-forsaken place. Indeed, they very nearly succeeded. Of course, after that I couldn't let the rebellious one live, even if they were my children, so I killed them mercifully, while those with good sense entered into paradise. I must say, it was not quite the ending to the tale I'd expected, but it was so much more interesting than I could dare to hope, so I was satisfied. And now, finally, here I am, in the creaturely realm with so many things to do and see. Indeed, I don't think I'll ever be bored again. What an inconceivable venture it's been. Well, there you go. My D&D campaign from the god who was behind it all. At least, my best attempt at his perspective. I personally like the ending, but I know some of my players weren't a fan, so yeah. That's how I ended it, though. They all either died or went to paradise and lost morally. Great combo. I don't know, I kind of get tired of all the happy endings things have, so I gave it an unhappy ending. Anyway, that day I did my last plasma donation at BioLife. As far as their new deal donor goes, I did go more after that. And then I did my last session of my campaign. It was a bit sad to see it end, but it was also a lot of work, so it was kind of a relief as well. Overall, I think it went pretty well. So if you are interested in listening to recordings, I do have them, and it's tolerable. Not spectacular, that's for sure, but tolerable. I don't think anyone's going to take me up on this offer, but who knows. After that, I went to the Alley Cat, where I worked on my last Life After Email, and I talked to Mom for a bit while I was there, and then Joe stopped by. And I ran an experiment to see if, without really talking much, mere proximity would be socially fulfilling. And Joe's answer was like, no. Yeah, definitely no. So yeah, after Joe left, Braden then stopped by for the same reason. He was also like, yep, nope, that doesn't work at all. So I think that concept was kind of a bust. After being there and working on my last email for like 6 hours, I then went to Joe's house where they had just finished a movie night. So Karina, Benj, Caleb, and Joe, as well as Noah, were all there. I have a picture of Joe and Noah doing a thing, but you can't see it, so fair enough. Noah had to go early because he had work in the morning, but the rest of us drove to Longmont and got donuts, which was pretty good, before going and playing in the sprinklers at night, which I personally thought was great, but Caleb and Benj were not digging it. So yeah, that was a really good time. I got poor sleep that night, which is a bit of a big sad.
Big oof.
But when morning arrived, I did manage to read another peer-reviewed paper on the canon. So it was obviously not the worst time. I got a table from a dumpster, played Minecraft, I think with the gang, and then had everyone over to watch some anime, which in hindsight was a lot better than an actual sight. There were a lot of jokes, quote unquote, I didn't remember, which was kind of a big sketch, and yeah, the anime was super slow. So halfway we switched through over to Psyche K, which everyone liked a lot more because it's a comedy and frankly was a lot better. So yeah, bad call on my part, but we made it work, and it was a tolerable experience in the end. I have a picture of Joe in a very venerable state, but you can't see it, so oh well. Let's see. Oh yeah, after the anime night, I started what I deem my social fast. So basically, I plan to take a social fast where I cut like every event from my life except family, because one, I live with them, and two, I have to spend more time with them anyway because I kind of ignore them a lot of times. So yeah, it was a good idea, but it became more like a social diet. So yeah, it wasn't as executed perfectly. But I started my social fast and began with sleeping, which is always a good way to begin. So I slept until like 1, and then I traveled over to the Laurier Student Center once I got up, and intermittently read some peer-reviewed papers in the canon, and then also wandered around the campus because it's pretty interesting. When I got home, I ate something, and then watched some anime before doing some bio reading and hitting the sack. The next day, I went to work, because my boss isn't the kind of guy who's like, yeah, drop work for a few days, I don't mind. So I kind of had to do that. But yeah, I did that, and then Karina joined me for a vibe session, which, see, the ideal of the vibe sessions was people who still wanted to see me could be in proximity to me and work on their own thing while I worked on mine, and we could, have that whole we hung out together vibe. But apparently it was a trash idea because Karina was the only one to take me up on it, and she only did it once, and the vibes were pretty trash. So overall, I do the vibe session a total fail. But yeah, after that, my brain was pretty dead, so I grabbed some snacks and consumers, and then went on a walk by myself. And I must say, for the first few days, I was kind of like, well, it's night, but I can't see Joe. So yeah, it was a bit of a downer. I was kind of bored. I was like, what do I do with my nights? But in the end, I got over it and got, a bit more focused. So that night, I took a walk, did some prayer, and then read my Bible before going to bed. And the following day, I went to work once again, and we all went to a work-sponsored lunch for my boss Dave, which, like all events with free food, was pretty good. I then worked on memorizing history and philosophy as I explored CSU buildings in a semi-legal, but hey, if they don't want, people to get in, they shouldn't leave their doors unlocked way. And yeah, I walked straight for like 3 hours, which surprisingly gets tiring. But once I got home, I figured now that I had some free time, I should try my hand at digital art because, I wanted to make a fancy drawing of the echelons for my campaign. But it turns out, digital art's actually really hard. I've officially deemed art stupid. Why can't we just have machines that, take what's in our brain and put them on figurative paper? I mean, come on. Art is way too hard.
My logic is infallible.
I then slept pretty well. read some papers at Dutch Bros before working out for the first time in ages, because, I'm a professional philosophy couch potato. I then went to the Laureate Student Center and read some more papers and tried art again before giving up and buying Minecraft, partially because I want to join with Liam and Katie on their Minecraft hang time, because that's how we're keeping in touch these days with Katie gone and all, but also partially because I know I can do Minecraft, and I might as well, spend the time trying to do something I can maybe succeed at instead of just utterly failing. So, it's not like the best philosophy I've ever had, but it was my philosophy at the time, so yeah, that was the state of affairs. The next day, my sister and I began a room switch because, frankly, our house is weird. So, yeah, me and Ben often, are up late at night, and so our only way to get to the kitchen is through Grace's old room. So, we would often wake her up in that process, which was rightly deemed dysfunctional. Hence, the fix was to have me take her room, because I sleep a lot more soundly than her, and, since I was part of the problem, so that'd be a lot less problematic. So, yeah, we got all her stuff moved into the living room, which made our house look very hoardery, and then I got to painting her old room, aka now my new room. So I have some pictures, but I'm not sure, you can't see them because sound. So yeah, it wasn't carpet at this point, but everyone pitched in and helped me out with painting, so that was cool. But I did do a majority of the work, even though it was a team gig. So yeah, after painting was finished, which took a while, I then went on a run in a thunderstorm, which was fancy. And after that, me and Grace drove to Horsetooth and watched lightning before running out of the rain, because it just started randomly raining really hard. And we're like, we, flee to my car. And then finally that night, I watched the Violet Evergarden movie, which was officially trash. Don't bother to watch it. It's the worst. The following day, I woke up early, at least for me, because I need to get my room carpeted before the required D&D session so Grace could get her stuff moved in my old room. So, yeah, did that. I committed to playing Neo's one-shot, his clone one-shot, like ages ago, and it just happened to be during my life fast, so that's why I was doing something social during this time. So it was unfortunate, but he was planning for me and expecting me, so I couldn't really miss it. So yeah, I did barely make it in time, and then I dragged my sleep-deprived self off to be a clone, which was good. I was a sniper, and I had some really cool moments early on. It was pretty awesome. Toward the tail end, I didn't do as well, so that was a bit sad. But yeah, I then got home, played a bit of Minecraft, and then, also, I guess I should mention, Neo and John convinced me to attend on Sunday, the next day, because my character was integral to the next session of the D&D campaign. So that's my second time I broke a social fast, which was great. So yeah, the next morning I woke up, joining that D&D session aforementioned, and then spent a large part of the day trying to sort out my new room. I then went on a run, but my times have been absolutely trash, so yeah, they suck. And then I played some Minecraft before hitting the sack. The following day I finished my room, and I should say, I now have 2 rooms, because my D&D dungeon is officially now an extension of my room now that the campaign's over. And I have some pictures of my new room, but you can't see it. And yeah, it's pretty snazzy. So I did that, and then I proceeded to miss work because I forgot what day it was. So pro move on my part right there. And then I got a lecture the next day, because you don't just not come to work. But at the time, I didn't remember, so I was in blissful ignorance. So anyway, I played some Minecraft with Katie and Liam. I finished anime I was watching, and then read some more papers on the canon. And then I started this fancy book I got on the canon, which lists every canon list in, the time before Augustine. Actually, it goes a bit past Augustine, too. So yeah, it's pretty dense. I've taken quite a few notes this far, but it's really good. Anyway, that night I went rollerblading at City Park and happened to see this car with the word security printed in big letters all over it. And they were talking to this group of people, and I was like, oh, I wonder what this is about. And I just kind of rode by. But as I was blading past, one of the people was like, hey, what about that guy? And I'm assuming she went me, and I was like, oh, shoot. So I turned down, this random path 10% inconspicuously and bladed a bit faster. But, the problem was the path I went down, the dock path, only has one exit. So when I reached the exit, I noticed the security car camping out a little ways away. And I was like, well, this is sucky. I guess I didn't know I wasn't supposed to be here, so no reason to try and avoid the inevitable. So I just started, blading toward it. But as I did, the security car pulled out a spotlight. And what I gotta say, spotlights, intimidating. Intimidation factor on spotlights, 10. Maximally intimidating. And it started driving toward me, combing through the sidewalk as it, approached. But there just so happened to be some big trees about shoulder width, in diameter, between the road and the spotlight. So, as a kind of Hail Mary, I watched the light going past the trees, did my best to match my speed, just so I would, the same speed he was coming along, I would go past. And I timed it, so I went behind the tree just as his spotlight went past. I felt so epic. It was so cool. I didn't even look conspicuous. It's not like I stopped and hugged a tree or anything. I just, was blading. And just so happened, aka by pure skill, made it so that the shadow of the tree was on me the entire time as he went past. Anyway, It was kind of an epic moment. It was pretty great. The other thing that happened that night was me and Ben played some Minecraft together, which was good. And then, I went to sleep, as Katie often protests me noting. The following day, I had work, which was worky. And then I went to Brayden's 21st birthday, because, it's kind of a big deal, so I did break my social fast for that. And I was definitely pressured to do shots, but me being the wise lad I am, I put root beer in my cup. So that way I didn't have an empty glass, but I didn't also consume alcohol. So I call that a win-win and a very cunning move. But yeah, even with the shots, the other thing that was really different about everyone was a lot more swearing. So I don't know if anyone actually got drunk, but they were definitely tipsy, at the very least. Let's see. I then went home, because I didn't want things to get too crazy. And once I got home, I went for a light run, which was good, and then I watched some anime. The following day, I had work, and then Ben had this birthday thingy, because he's now officially 19 years of ages. And then I did some Minecraft before going to sleep. I have no idea what day of the week came after that, because once all my social events stopped happening, I completely forgot what day it was often, and 100% forgot what day of the week it was. So, hence the earlier missing work. But whatever day it was, I donated plasma, because they offered me $600 for 8 donations, and I'm like, yes, please. And the person who stuck me did a really bad job, so I was in agonizing pain the whole time, which was lovely. So once I got home, I was very happy to not be having a needle in me anymore, and then I read some more of my canon book, and then, rounded out the night with some Minecraft. The next morning, I tried to change my car's coolant, but I broke the radiator plug somehow. It's like me touching this car just makes it die, I'm telling you guys. So I ended up getting a new one of those, and then picked up my textbook for class, and also dropped off my car's death liquids at the recycling center, because, old power oil, old oil, power steering fluid, all that jazz is kind of super toxic. So yeah, I got home, slogged through some more of my canon book, and then played some Minecraft before going on a late-night run, and watching a bit of anime before going to bed. The next day, more plasma was sucked from my veins. I then went home, did some Bible reading, played some Minecraft, which, as you might have noticed, that game is evil in its addictiveness. And then I went on an evening blade where I went to the bottom of Fort Collins while working on memorizing history and philosophy, and then I power rode, all the way back up. I felt like a boss. I was super tired by the time I got back, but I went very fast uphill for a very long time. So yeah, it was cool. When I finally made it back home, my feet did this really weird thing that I'm going to call vibrosation, where basically my feet felt like they were kind of made of metal, and whenever I touched something with them, the sensation rippled through my whole foot and up my ankle. So if I flicked my toe, I could feel it in my heel. It was really weird, and at least 63% disconcerting. However, eventually, that stopped, so I'm grateful for that. But yeah, that was not fun. Anyway, once I got home from rollerblading, I ran out the night with a bit of anime, and then went to bed. The next day, I did some Bible reading, went on a lengthy blade with Grace, which was the bueno, and she has a beautiful picture of her face, which you have to see because it's spectacular, but you can't. And then I got home, did some Minecraft, and then did some more Bible reading before going with Ben to the Alley Cat to meet Morgan, where we talked for a bit, and then went to Waffle House to get some food, because we have no standards. And then finally, me, Ben, and Morgan all watched Maze Runner that night, which is a pretty decent movie. I've seen it before, but it was good rewatching it too. The following day, I went to work, as per usual, and then I went to Caleb's house for an emergency scheduling discussion, though in hindsight, I don't really understand why it was an emergency. It seemed more like you could have waited, so I wonder if it was a ploy. But yeah, after that, Caleb pulled the justice card I had given the group, because I recognized it wasn't really fair for me to, make exceptions for my D&D group and for Brayden's birthday, and not for, the squad. So I joined them on a single trip up to Estes where we pseudo-stargazed, which wasn't really what I had in mind, but it was still really good. So yeah, it was definitively a really good time. On the way back, we listened to my peaceful/hopeful playlist, which was bueno. Everyone got to witness the greatness of my music choice. And then finally, Joe and I may have talked until 3 a.m, and I had no excuse for that. I totally just willingly broke my social fast because I like talking to Joe. The following day, I had work, and then I went to a pseudo-mandatory Ratio Christi meeting. And I say pseudo because it sounded like we were going to be discussing what, Ratio Christi was going to become. And I definitely need to be there for that because, Ratio Christi is a big part of my life. But instead, it was more like Noah telling us what Ratio Christi was going to become with a little bit of room for suggestions. So I didn't actually have to be there. But I did get to talk to Alan, so that totally made it worth it. And we had some pretty good discussions. The following morning, I went to work once more. And then upon getting home, I finished up the entire Old Testament. So you see, around this time last August, Katie, the ex-Ratio Christi Katie, her, was like, yeah, I've been going through this chronological Bible reading plan. And I was like, oh, cool, can you send it to me? So she did, and I started it all the way back then. And the reason was largely because back, in my early CEC days, I was talking with this nihilist girl, Alex, if you remember her from way back when, and she was presenting her, anti-Christian polemic, and she said, have you even read the whole Bible? It's like a diss, and I was like, well, technically, no. And then, that made me seem lame. So, I decided to fix that. The reason that was the case is because my childhood philosophy was like, well, the New Testament is the only part of the Bible that's actually relevant to me, so why don't I just read over that, like, a bazillion times? So, I do know the New Testament really well, just not the Old Testament. I didn't read it, like, at all until I was 17, so, yeah. I did start reading through it chronologically, but then I got kind of sidetracked when I found philosophy, because, the heavenly lights of metaphysical illumination just, like, burst forth, and philosophy descends, and you see me just chuck the Bible aside.
Big oof.
Okay, it wasn't that bad, but I definitely refocused my efforts for some time after finding philosophy. So yeah, basically last year I started gradually reading the Old Testament in its entirety, and now I finally finished it. And I have exactly 47 pages of notes to show for it. So, while I recognize it's a pretty lame flex in Christian communities to be like, ha, I've read the whole Bible, because basically everyone's done that like 7 times, except for apparently me. But I'm still going to do that flex, because it took me forever and I felt cool. So yeah, after finishing the entire Old Testament, I'm awesome, I went on a run, and then I played some Minecraft. The next day, I donated more life juices, hung with Dad at Five Guys, we talked about some stuff, I worked on memorizing the history of philosophy some more, and then I did some more Minecraft and some anime before bed. The day after that consisted of more history of philosophy memorization, before joining Ben at Young Life, where me and Benj, because Benj came along as well, played some Spike Ball, and almost beat some guys, but we technically lost, so it was a big sad. And then once that was over, I watched some anime, worked some more on my history of philosophy memorization, and then I watched some anime with Ben, which was also good. The next day, I donated more plasma, which was extra death because it was the beginning of a series of unfortunate events where apparently my left arm has become much harder to stick a needle into properly because like 4 out of 5 times I've gone to, have them stick me, they've failed. And then they, try 6 times before they are like, you know what, this arm's too hard. Let's switch to your other arm. Which sucks twofold because now both my arms have needle holes in them. And second, because my right arm is actually useful. My left arm is like, I can take it or leave it. But you kind of need your right arm for like a lot of things. So when they stick a needle in my right arm, it gets incapacitated and then I can't use it. And then driving home is really hard because I have 2, stuck up arms. So you turn the wheel weird. It's not fun. Anyway, they eventually did stab me properly and it sucked, but oh well, I got money for it, so I guess it's worth it. I then joined my family without Ben because he had work on a drive up to the Wave's new cabin, which was mucho boring because I thought David and Sam were coming, but they didn't, and I didn't bring anything to entertain myself. So all I had was my history of philosophy memorization and music. So I did a lot of history of philosophy memorizing. I very much have the Arabic philosophers down now. And I also did a lot of listening to music. So yeah, the next morning was more of the essence of boring, and I must say, it is remarkable how slow time can go when you literally have nothing to do. Like, you can't talk to anybody, you have no games to play, you literally just sitting in nature, which can be fun, but after 5 hours, you're like, please take me to a place artificial. Anyway, I did get to have a conversation with Aunt Becky and my mom about Catholicism, because they're both ex-Catholics, so that was at least, 1% redeeming. Once I got home, I watched some anime, and then I read my mechanic book some more, and then I helped Grace unlock her phone, which she had disabled up at the cabin. So yeah, I did some things. The day after that was Monday, which marked the start of school again for me. So yeah, I went to work for 2.5 hours before coming home and watching an anime episode as 8, and then hanging off to chemistry class, where the professor did not ease us in. I did some chem homework upon getting home, and then I met up with Noah, Benj, and Ben to try and play some Ultimate Frisbee, which didn't end up happening, which was a big sad. Hence, as a consolation prize, we kind of got the game together with the addition of Ben, Benj, and Josh. Haha. See, did you see that? I didn't even hesitate when I said his name. It's Josh, not John.
Wink.
And then we all played poker at the Alley Cat, which was, decent. After that, Josh dropped Ben off because his dad had made him, get back at 10:30, which was a big sad, but nice of Josh to do. And then we all played Brawlhalla of the Night. So, yeah. Oh, also, Josh is now engaged. Apparently. Apparently my polemic against marriage is really poor, because it seems like no one has listened to my advice. No one's even like, I'll reconsider. They're all just like, Alex, you're stupid. So, yeah, big sad. But, good for him. Katie's an actually decent human being, and there's at least a, 32% chance things will work out, so it should go well. After that, I had my first calculus-based physics class of the semester, which went well. I reconnected with a student named Malia from last semester, and she was interested in knowing about, why there are good reasons to believe in God, which I am super stoked to talk about. I also met this really smart atheist named Michael, and we've had quite a few good conversations, so I'm stoked for his existence as well. I've finally met someone who I can talk to at my level, other than Alan and Matt, which makes me pretty excited. I didn't get much sleep that night because I was pondering the conversation me and smart atheist man had, but oh well, it was totally worth it because at least I'm finally intellectually stimulated. The following morning, I engaged in the deathly discipline of chemistry, which had a lab, so that was a pretty hectic class and a lot of death. And when I got home, I did some homework before playing some of my Oculus because they just gave me like 10 free bucks, and I was like, okay. And then I caught up with Jordan for a bit, which was good. And then finally, I ran out the night by hanging with Joe for the first time in ages because my social fast ended, woo, and I liked Joe. So it was enjoyable. The following day was Thursday, so more plasma was sucked from my veins. I then proceeded to do a physics lab upon getting home, and then me and Caleb did something, but I don't remember what it was. And then I, went to sleep. The day after was more work, school, me looking like a mathematical boss in chemistry, because, see, I was the only one who got a problem done in time, and the teacher asked me what my answer was, so I was like, this, and he was like, you did it perfectly, and then I became a celebrity, and it was the worst, because then everyone started asking me questions, and I was like, I just want to do my work. So yeah, overall mistake, I should have gotten it wrong, but I felt cool for a second. After that, I played soccer, where I found out I'd actually broken a guy's wrist last month, which made me feel really bad, because I didn't know that. He actually played the entire rest of the game after that, and he did block a very good shot. So yeah, I found out I'm a horrible person, which was great. And then after finding out I was a horrible person and playing some soccer, I went over to Noah and Melissa's house for dinner, which was okay. And then Ben and I left early because, I had homework and he had work. I gave up more life juices Saturday, did some homework, and then, and then I had the death talk. So, ready? Tangent. Me and my dad have had this disagreement of sorts for a while. Basically, I mean, it's kind of a strong word for it because, he's clearly wrong, so it's more like Dad being wrong and me being right. But anyway, Dad thinks I haven't done enough research to adjudicate which sect of Christianity is true until I research what he deems the Messianic Jews. So I tried to point out to him that Messianic Judaism, if not merely an ethnic label, is definitely not on level with the Orthodox Catholics and Protestants, and, maybe the Coptics, but no one cares about them. But, he insists they are. So, with a burger and fries on the table, we struck up a deal that we would consult an authority of his choosing to adjudicate this issue once and for all. Which, I will tell you, was a big mistake because he chose the person who I was like, no. Because, see, I thought they had studied biblical studies at Harvard, but actually they had gone to Bethel School of Ministry, and you may now cringe, and then had studied economics at Harvard. So when it came time for me to have this conversation, these facts came to light. I was like, well, no offense, but Bethel School of Ministry does not make you a qualified authority on this issue. Because it's Bethel, and it's also just the School of Ministry. You have to have, biblical studies, or maybe it's systematic theology, or I don't know. So, yeah, I was like, no offense, but you're not an authority. And they were like, I am stupidly offended, and thus proceeded to death. So, see, as typical members of the extreme charismatic tradition, when she encountered my blunt and straightforward self, she started asking me questions like, are you upset? What's going on that's deeper here? To which I replied, no, not upset, and I have a goal, and I'm trying to achieve it. Nothing deeper is the matter, and me and my dad just have a disagreement. We're hoping you could adjudicate. But of course, that didn't satisfy her, so she began to, quote-unquote, search my heart to unveil my, true nature, which apparently is either the embodiment of the devil himself or someone with severe antisocial personality disorder. Not quite sure which. She wasn't entirely clear. Okay, so I'm going to take this opportunity to rant about this encounter because, like a good, logical, and virtuous lad, I took this all in stride at the time. I didn't say much in my own defense. But I need to point out the blatant hypocrisy, if for no other reason than to vindicate myself and express my vexation. So, like I said before, the conversation began with the brief, introductions, and then after Dad asked a few preliminary questions like, how's your dad doing, what's school been like, all that relevant stuff, I cut the chase and it was like, hey, so we have a question. And apparently, she found that quite offensive, because I did not take 10 minutes to get to know her, which in hindsight, I suppose, was, a bit of a mistake on my part. I probably should have more small talk. But still, I come with a goal in mind. I thought that's why we're here. So, yeah. Anyway, upon that, she started the aforementioned quote-unquote heart searching, at which point, I confess, I reacted in a non-optimal way. Because see, what I should have done upon realizing she was the super feely, super charismatic kind of person is I should have kept that revelation to myself, upped my emotional expression by a factor of 10,000%, and then strove to leave the conversation as politely and swiftly as possible. Also, let me expound upon what I mean by that kind of person. There's a sort of person who, perhaps through training or perhaps through nature, I'm not really sure, is very invested and attuned, strong word there, but I'll use it, to the heart states of those they meet. And in a lot of cases, it serves them well. Because, a lot of people, when they're wrestling with a question, they don't often really need the answer to the question, but the question arises out of some sort of emotional malformation or, root of doubt or whatever that is. So when most people seem emotionally distraught or out of whack and say they're fine, they're lying, right? They aren't actually okay. They're actually having a hard time. So when this kind of person that we're meeting, here's I'm fine or I'm actually okay, it's usually expedient for them to be like, no, I don't believe you. I can sense your emotions. And so they, don't trust you telling them the truth. So they, basically often go straight to what they call the heart and shoot for the jugular, where they're like, what's the real reason for this? Issue or disagreement. So while this does serve them well in a lot of cases, the problem is that not all people are like that. Some of us, including myself, are actually emotionally fine when we're fine, and even if we see off, and do not have a problem. Well, okay, false. I might have some problems, but we aren't like emotionally distraught, or at least I'm not emotionally distraught. When I ask a question like, "Hey, is it the case that the Messianic Jews are as big and as core a tradition to Christianity as, say, Orthodoxy?" That's not because I have some emotional, malformity I'm trying to remedy. It's because I actually want to know the answer to that question. Although, of course, I didn't really think she could answer that question, so it's kind of irrelevant. But the point is that when I ask a question, I often ask the question. I don't have some deeper, emotional need I need filled. So anyway, as you can probably tell, I really loathe interactions with these kind of persons because, one, I had encountered a lot of them when I was growing up, and when I was actually trying to find truth and, hoping to actually have answers, they would, give me the soft, fluffy, emotion answers, which was really vexing beyond description. So yeah, didn't really enjoy those historically. And on the other hand, I don't like them partially because we just fundamentally can't communicate. Like, these kinds of people don't take what you say at face value. They read into your tone, body posture, etc., which, like I said before, is usually a useful skill. But when it comes talking to me, it's like 100% not useful, because my tone and body posture often communicate the exact opposite of what I'm trying to say. Because what I say is what I, mean. No, false. Because what I mean is what I say, first try. Upon realizing this, aka that she was this kind of person, I made a fundamental error, and instead of trying to become more emotional, fluffy, and more unicorn-like, I lowered my attentiveness to the emotional cues I was giving off and tried to brute logic my way through, which went so poorly. So yeah, basically, I said something along the lines of, look, I know the kind of person you are, and I get this is, a hard examination thing you guys do, but honestly, I'm fine. And man, did that backfire. First, I said, people like you, big no-no. Don't do that. Apparently that is super offensive. Second, I said, I get this a lot, which, confirmed to her that I actually am diseased and other people were quote-unquote seeing this too. So yeah, basically for the next 2 hours, I kid you not, 2 hours, she basically, talked to me, or that's a nice way to put it. We'll call it talking, to me about how rude, inconsiderate, and horrible I am as a human being. She even got mad enough to apologize to my dad for me as an existent being. She was like, I'm really sorry you have this as your son. And I was like, okay, well, thank you. Good to know. So she was, very emphatic upon what she wanted to communicate. And I just want to point out that when I say, you're like, this group of people, aka I might categorize you as someone else, you are the charismatic type, that is definitely less rude than saying, I'm sorry you exist. So I just want to point out that I was at least 10% virtuous, and she was less than 10% virtuous. But yeah, anyway, it was a death conversation. I got out of it by basically leading her to come to the conclusion I had some sort of inability to know what rudeness is, which is not entirely false, because let's be honest, it's me. But yeah, instead of thinking I was a child of the devil, she became much more compassionate, as she, decided I was merely a diseased human being with some sort of social disorder. So, I can't be blamed for my offensive nature.
My logic is infallible.
So yeah, I got out of that alive. It was not an enjoyable experience, and I totally remember why I very much disliked the kind of person. But nevertheless, I was, I think, pretty good. Well, let's see. Yes, I was pretty good at my responses. Like, I didn't say anything false or say anything mean-spirited. So I think I would have handled it decently well, except for the aforementioned, fact that I was an emotionally brick wall. So she didn't really listen to my words. She listened to my facial expressions. My facial expressions were saying, "I hate this conversation," because that's how that's actually the case. So yeah, I'm not sure I communicated everything perfectly, but I didn't say anything bad. I said things good. So anyway, I learned something from my experience, namely that it might actually be important for me to get social skills. Because sometimes you can't just, walk away. Sometimes you're stuck. Because your dad is your ride. He hasn't left. So I realized I might actually need to, get some social skills sooner rather than later. So I can deal with these people, if for no other reason than not to make mortal enemies when there's no need to. Because I'm pretty sure she hates me extremely now. Anyway, so yeah, that happened. I got home, played some Minecraft before Noah came over, and we indulged in some Caesar salad before driving to Horsetooth Reservoir, where I explained the core aspects of Tomonism to him, which, might I say, was such a refreshing conversations after the last one. I think he got it all pretty well. I mean, we'll see, but he learned pretty fast, and personally I was kind of surprised at how well he understood things. And also how clear things can be once you actually understand them yourself. So yeah, Noah's actually starting to care about philosophy, which is pretty exciting. And he wants to learn about Thomism, which is the actual best, so awesome for him. The next day, I did homework before going to D&D at Neo's, as per usual, and then we did Bible study before playing Smash Bros. Into the night. Monday night, Caleb was in Hawaii, so Joe, Noah, and Ben by osmosis drove up to the place I knew where we stargazed and did that for a few hours, which was awesome. And I gotta say, soaking up the stars is a pretty great practice, like on the top 10 favorite things I'd like to do. So yeah, I just sat there and properly stargazed while Ben, Noah, and Joe all talked, and they were kind of like, "Alex, you should say something." But I was enjoying the vibe, and I recognize that I often dominate conversations I'm in, so I figured I would give them a chance to take in the conversation and, talk about things they wanted to instead of just talking about what I wanted to. So yeah, there was a small amount of virtuous intent in my silence, but it was mostly selfish because I liked the vibe. Anyway, it was pretty great. I ended up leaving a bit early, as did everyone else, because Ben had a craving for some food, so we all went down, and then he gave us some money to get snacks, because he is the rich boyo. And then Noah went home, and then me and Joe and Ben all ate our food at CSU before I went to bed, and then apparently Ben and Joe stayed up and talked until like 5 in the morning, so that was a little lengthy, but I dodged it because I needed to sleep for school. So yeah, the next day was Tuesday. I went to work, did some homework, went to school, all that jazz. But as far as original things go, I did talk with Michael, the really smart guy I talked about earlier, about the essence of beauty. No, false. And it was the essence of beauty, aka it was a really good conversation because he's actually intelligent. I love talking to him. So yeah, we did that, and I may have mostly just talked to him instead of attending Ratio Christi, even though I was technically there. So that could be slightly bad because it has been conflicting. But anyway, it was a good conversation. That's what I'm trying to say. The next day was work, school, and then I had a chemistry lab, which was approximately 8% death. But the real sadness of the day was that Malia bailed on me as far as our philosophical talk goes. So yeah, that was really sad because it was obviously a bail. It wasn't even like, you have a legitimate excuse. It was just like, no. So I hope that happens. Anyway, that, happening, or more like not happening, gave me some unexpected time to do some homework, which I did, and then I got a chance to catch up with William, which I also did, which was good. We had a conversation about Calvinism, because he's one of those, and I brought up some rebuttals of his position, he brought up a rebuttal of mine. It was very good. We had a good talk. After that, I hung with Joe, and we, walked around, talked some, because he had an influential conversation with Alan, but he kind of got gimped, so I was like, I want to hear your thoughts, or more like Alan's thoughts, and tell you why he didn't, actually win. He kind of cheesed you, but oh well. Yeah, it was good. Joe is definitely becoming smarter, which is enjoyable, because now I don't have to explain things very much. Except, he still makes some stupid arguments, like that night he argued for Cartesian dualism, which is the worst. So, anyway, it was a good talk, and we hung out. The next day, I gave it my life juices more, went to the physics lab, did homework, and then Michael and I, the aforementioned atheist, went stargazing up in the mountains at the aforementioned spot, which he didn't dig as much as I did, which was kind of sad, but it was still an enjoyable experience, and we had good conversation, so it was overall a win. The following day, I did more physical labor, went to school, played soccer with the usual squad, and then I went stargazing with Braden, and I know this is a lot of stargazing, but it just doesn't get old, so I 3 times in a row, totally worth it. And he loved it, like, a lot, so I think I found my new stargazing partner. So yeah, that was a really good time. And then after that, we went to his house, and we played some Smash Bros. In the night, which was fun. The next day, I worked on fixing my car, because my brakes were making this like grinding noise. And so I checked it out, and it turns out one of the bolts for my caliper mount had actually fallen out, and the other was super loose, aka my brakes almost fell off. So yeah, glad I caught that when I did. Basically, that's the lesson. Always tighten your bolts. Yeah. So yeah, it may have been one of the parts I replaced apparently improperly, so gotta keep that in mind. Anyway, I got the replacement bolts for my car before anything bad happened, put them in, lowered, my car back down after jacking it up, and in all honesty, it was a really easy fix, so that was good. So yeah, I did that. After that, I donated plasma, and then I got my arms murdered again. And the whole experience took like an hour longer than usual, so that also sucked. And then when I got home, I played a bit of Minecraft before spending like 2 hours searching through animes, or potential animes, because I'd run out. And that took a bit. The following morning, people were gone from Southgate, and Sean had invited me to Mass, so I ended up joining him for that. It was better than Latin Mass, I must say, because I could actually understand things without reading a book, and it was also a bit more relaxed. However, what really impacted me about the whole experience was just that how, moved Sean was by the service. Like, he was tearing up from hearing, the hymns and seeing the Eucharist. And I don't want to be a waterworks factor or anything, but I definitely, do think it's disordered that I don't get moved by objective beauty. So I guess I admired that he was responsive to the objective goodness around him in a way that I'm, not really ever. So, yeah, I guess I'm just trying to say it was a good experience. Also, I'm pretty sure Sean is going to become Catholic, or already is Catholic. I honestly didn't see this coming, because he's the one arguing for, mere Christianity and Protestantism all the time. At least he was in our Rational Christianity debates. But something about the Catholic Church really got to him, so he's going to the other side. Which, fortunately for him, he happens to be, surrounded by a bunch of smart people who think he's making a smart decision, so we don't, tear him up. But still, I don't think that's really what moved him. He wasn't, intellectually convinced. He was more like, I got vibes, as far as I can tell. Anyway, did that, went to Catholic Church, and then did a response to Joel Bartram's bi-monthly rambly email, which was legendary. And then I went to Neo's house and finally was able to buy some things in his campaign because, oh my gosh, he has not given us gold in months. It's actually been so long. So after we did that, I played some Minecraft where everyone talked about the very boring subject of politics, but John did rope me into taking this quiz, which it turned out I'm basically 100% centrist, so yeah, I kind of expected. But, yep, the politics conversation lasted for a while, and then we went to King Soopers to get snacks, we walked there, and had some good conversations along the way. And then finally, upon getting back, we played Smash into the Night, which, John and Braden kind of got a bit fed up with my quote-unquote arrow spamming, which I think is a strong word, but I guess I'll use it. However, I ended up leaving before they were able to take any action against me, aka make me play a different character, so that was good. The next Monday, I felt like trash. I stayed home from work. Well, no, actually, I didn't. Right. I would have stayed home from work, but it was Labor Day, and my boss didn't give me a break on Labor Day, so I figured if I called the day off on the day of, he would probably think I was just dodging the, work because I wanted to, not because I was actually sick. So I ended up coming in because I was like, he won't believe me if I say I'm sick. So I made it through the day, but it was actually so hard. Probably the worst day of work I've had yet. And then, I felt like trash, so when I got home, I just slept. And then I did, end up working on this life demo for a bit, and yeah, basically didn't do much else that day. And so the next day I felt, still sick, but a bit better. And so I took the day off work at school, and I decided to get a COVID test just in case. And it turns out that the nose pregnancy test did indeed reveal I had the disease of death. And also, as for the nose pregnancy reference, Ben came up with it, and I think it's actually really funny because if you see the test, it 100% makes sense. So yeah, anyway, I discovered I had COVID, and my life got atom bombed. And so now I'm here, in my basement, doing nothing. So yeah, I entered another life fast, except this time it was government mandated, and I felt like a dying meat sack, and I did nothing for the rest of the day. So yeah, the next day I spent a lot more time reading my book on the canon, because I had nothing else to do, took a ton of notes. I played some anime, played some Oculus, played some anime. I watched some anime, played some Oculus, and I might say it has taken me so long to get through this book. I spent 15, maybe 20 hours now, and I literally have only made 50 pages. Trust me, it's not because I'm a slow reader. It's just because every page has so much info, which is great. But trying to copy it all in my notes has taken so much work. I think I have 26,000 words of notes, but some of that's copied. So I think 20,000, maybe 15,000 is accurate. It's a lot of notes. Anyway, the next day I felt really, really bad. I licked a bar of soap, and I couldn't taste it, so I'm assuming that means I've lost my taste. I also did a lot of reading, watched a lot of anime, and basically just tried not to die. I did basically nothing productive because I felt horrible. I did attend a virtual physics lab because I don't want to make up labs and making up labs was super death, but I was not there for it. My brain was 100% dead. And then that night, my lab partners didn't do the lab, so I had to do it while super sick, and that 100% sucks, and this is why group projects are the worst. But I did make it, and then I went to sleep like directly after because I was so tired. Finally, yesterday, I did start to feel a bit better. I got some good sleep and was able to actually get some homework done. So yeah, that was good. I'm starting to reboot. Now I just feel like, I'm sick instead of a dying meat sack. So yeah, that was good. I didn't do much, obviously, because I'm stuck quarantined. And then finally, that brings us to today, where I've done absolutely nothing original. I read some book. I watched some anime. Wrote this life update email, and that's about it. So yep, thanks for reading. Talk to y'all next week. COVID sucks.
I guess the only thing I can do is learn from it and trust that